I smiled the morning I got that phone call because I already knew exactly what I was going to do. Let me back up. My name is Diane. I'm 31 years old and I own a 2-bedroom condo on the 14th floor of a building in downtown Nashville. I bought it 8 months ago after 6 years of eating lunch at my desk, skipping vacations, and telling myself the sacrifice was worth it. The condo has floor-to-ceiling windows that face east, and on clear mornings the light comes in and turns everything gold. The first time I stood in that empty living room with the keys in my hand, I actually cried. Not dramatically, just quietly, by myself with nobody watching. That detail matters. Nobody was there. Nobody helped me get there. That's important for everything that comes after. I have an older brother named Derek. He's 38 and he has always operated under the assumption that what's mine is also his. Not in a conspiratorial way. Not even in a mean way most of the time. He just genuinely believes that family means shared resources, and that the person with the most resources should be the most generous. The problem is that most generous always seemed to translate to most available to Derek. The first time I lent him money, I was 24. He needed $1,200 to cover a security deposit on an apartment after his roommate bailed. I had just started my second job out of college and I had maybe $3,000 in savings, but he was my brother and he asked, so I wrote him a check. He paid me back $400 of it, then stopped mentioning it. When I brought it up 6 months later, he looked genuinely confused, like I was the one being strange for keeping track. That should have told me everything. But I kept going. Because that's what you do. You love your family, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You tell yourself it's just money and relationships matter more. Over the next 7 years, I lent Derek money for a used truck he said he needed for a new job, for a medical bill he said insurance wouldn't cover, for plane tickets when he came to visit me for Thanksgiving, and somehow expected me to buy his return flight home, too. I covered a chunk of his girlfriend Tina's bridal shower because he said his card was temporarily frozen. I paid for his half of our mother's birthday dinner 3 times. I kept a note in my phone, not because I'm petty, because I needed to feel like I wasn't losing my mind. The total, by the time I bought my condo, was $14,600. Not counting the dinners or the smaller things I stopped tracking because it was too depressing. Derek came to see the condo once, about 2 months after I moved in. He walked through it with his hands in his pockets, nodding slowly the way people do when they're trying to seem impressed, but are actually doing math. He stood at the living room window for a long time. "Nice view," he said. Then, "What are you paying for this place?" When I told him, he whistled. "Man, that's a lot of money to be living by yourself." I didn't say anything. I showed him where the coffee mugs were and changed the subject. Tina, his girlfriend, not yet his wife at that point, had come with him. She walked through the second bedroom twice. "This would make such a cute nursery," she said, even though neither of them had kids or were pregnant. I remember standing in the doorway while she measured the window with her hands and thinking, this woman has never once asked me a single question about my life. They left after 2 hours. Derek hugged me at the door and said, "We should do this more often," meaning I should have them over more, not that he would invite me anywhere. This is background. This is so you understand what kind of relationship we had before the phone call. The phone call came on a Saturday morning in October. I was still in my robe, drinking coffee, watching the city below me wake up. It was one of those mornings that felt genuinely peaceful. The kind you try to hold on to before the day gets loud. My phone buzzed. "Derek." "Hey," I said. "Hey." He sounded energetic in the way that immediately made me cautious. Derek only sounds that energetic when he wants something. "So, Tina and I have been talking, and we've got this whole thing coming up. Her cousin is getting married in Nashville in 3 weeks. Did I tell you that?" He had not told me that. "No," I said. "Yeah, it's like a whole big family thing. Her side, you know how they are. So basically there's like," he paused, "it's going to be like 8 of us coming up, maybe 9. I put my coffee mug down. 8 or 9 people, I said. "Yeah, her parents, 2 of her sisters and their husbands, and then her aunt and uncle. Oh, and Tina's brother Marcus. He's flying in from Phoenix. It's kind of a reunion situation. They don't all get together that often, so they're making a weekend out of it." "Okay," I said slowly. So the thing is, hotels downtown are insane right now. Like, I looked it up and it's over $250 a night per room, and we'd need like 4 rooms minimum, so that's $1,000 a night, Diane. That's just not, we can't do that. I knew what was coming. I knew, and I still waited, because part of me thought maybe I was wrong. You've got that second bedroom, he said, and your living room is huge. We figured some people could take the bedroom, some people could do the pull-out or sleeping bags in the living room. It's just 3 nights, Friday to Sunday. There it was. I want to describe for you exactly how I felt in that moment. Because it wasn't what you might expect. It wasn't rage. It was something colder and quieter than rage. It was the specific exhaustion of someone who has been asked to give one too many times, by someone who has never once stopped to consider the asking. It was the feeling of standing at that window alone with my keys, except in reverse. The opposite of that moment. Derek, I said, this is my home. I know. We'd be respectful, obviously, 9 people. Well, 8 confirmed. Marcus might not make it. Derek, this is a 2-bedroom condo. I live here. By myself. This isn't a vacation rental. I live here. By myself. This isn't a vacation rental. It's family though. That phrase. That exact phrase. It sat in my chest like a stone. Tina's family is basically my family, and you're my family, so I'll think about it, I said. I said it to end the conversation. Not because I was actually going to think about it. Okay, great, he said, as if I had already said yes. I'll tell them it's probably good. The wedding's on Saturday, so we need to be there Friday for sure. I'll text you the details. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a moment. Then I set my phone face down on the coffee table, and I looked out my window at the city for a long time. Here's the thing about being the responsible one in a family. People mistake your reliability for limitlessness. They think because you always figure it out, you can always figure out more. They don't see the figuring. They just see the outcome and assume it came easily to you because hard things always seem to come easily to the people who work hardest at making them look that way. I had worked very hard to make my life look manageable. And now Derek was going to load 8 of his girlfriend's relatives into that manageable life like it was a hostel. Not if I had anything to say about it. I didn't call him back. I didn't text. I let 2 days pass, and on Monday morning, before work, before coffee, I called my building's management office. I want to say this clearly, I didn't do this out of spite. I did it because I knew Derek. I knew that if I called him and said no, he would argue. He would say I was being selfish. He would get Tina on the phone, and Tina would do the thing where she sounds slightly wounded and confused, like she can't quite believe anyone would say no to something so reasonable. He would remind me of every family event he'd ever attended, every time he'd shown up when I needed him, even though I've never actually needed him for anything because I've always handled my own life. He would make it into a thing. A whole exhausting, days-long thing. And at the end of it, I still would have said no, but I would have lost a week of my life and about 30% of my peace. I didn't have it in me anymore. So I called the management office and I spoke to a woman named Patricia who was extraordinarily professional and thorough. I explained that I had a family member who might attempt to bring a large number of unregistered guests into my unit without my permission. I asked what my options were. Patricia told me that all guests must be registered at the front desk. That my unit had a 2-guest overnight limit per the lease agreement I had signed, and that building security had full authority to deny entry to anyone not on an approved guest list. She also told me that if I wanted, I could proactively flag my unit with a note in the system. I asked her to do that. Then I sat down and I wrote Derek a text. Not a long one. Just, hey, I've been thinking about it and I can't do the 9 people thing. The building has really strict guest rules and I looked it up. I'm only allowed 2 overnight guests at a time. It's in my lease. I'm sorry. He read it. He didn't respond for 6 hours. When he did, it was, can't you just not tell them? I put my phone down. He called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. His message was 4 minutes long. He said I was making a big deal out of nothing. He said Tina's family were good people and would never trash the place. He said that he'd thought I had more flexibility than this. He said, and this is the part I keep coming back to, I really thought you'd come through for us on this one, Diane. Come through for us. As if I owed him that. As if my home was a resource he had some standing claim to, and I was the one failing to deliver. I did not call him back. The weekend of the wedding arrived. I'd taken Friday off work for entirely unrelated reasons. I had a dentist appointment in the morning and had planned to spend the afternoon doing nothing, which I was very much looking forward to. I was home by noon in comfortable clothes with a book and no obligations. At 2:17 p.m., my phone rang. Derek, I answered. Hey, so we're about 20 minutes out, he said. Like it was already settled, like the text conversation had never happened. I stood up from my couch. 20 minutes out from where? I said. From your place. We figured we'd drop bags and then head to the rehearsal dinner. The room got very quiet. I'm not being dramatic when I say my vision sharpened. That thing that happens when your body understands something before your brain has fully caught up. Derek, I said, I told you no. I know you said that, but I figured once we got here, you need to turn around. Diane, I'm serious. You need to turn around right now, because if you pull up to this building, you are not getting in. Silence. Then what do you mean we're not getting in? You live there. I do. And I've already spoken to building management. Everyone coming in has to be on a registered guest list. You're not on it, neither is anyone else. More silence. I could hear Tina saying something in the background. You called management on your own family, he said. Not a question, a statement. Flat and stunned, I made sure the rules I already agreed to in my lease were followed, I said. That's not calling management on you, that's just the way the building works. He said I was being unbelievable. He said he couldn't believe I would do this. He asked if I understood how embarrassing this was going to be in front of Tina's family. He said, after everything, without specifying what everything was because there was no everything. Not really, not anything that flowed in my direction. I'm sorry you're in this position, I said. I hope you find somewhere comfortable to stay. I meant it about the hotels being nice. I hung up. I stood in my living room for a moment. Then I walked to the window. The city was bright and ordinary in the afternoon light. Someone was playing music somewhere below. A dog was barking. I made myself a cup of tea. About 45 minutes later, my phone blew up. Derek. Then an unknown number that turned out to be Tina. Then another unknown number that was, I think, Tina's mother, based on the voicemail she left. Calm but unmistakably icy, explaining that she found this very rude and not how family behaves. I listened to all the voicemails. I didn't respond to any of them. What I did instead, I called Patricia at management to let her know they had tried to come regardless, and to thank her for putting the flag on my account. She confirmed that a group of 9 people had shown up at the front desk around 3 p.m. and had been told they were not on the registered guest list and could not proceed to my floor. She said they had argued with security for about 15 minutes before leaving. 15 minutes. I thought about that. 9 adults, in a lobby, arguing with a security guard about a guest list, because my brother had decided that my lease agreement was a suggestion. They found a hotel. I know this because Derek texted me on Sunday. 2 words. Found somewhere. That was it. No acknowledgement of what had happened. No apology, nothing. Just the information delivered like a receipt. I texted back, I'm glad, hope the wedding was nice. He didn't respond. For a week or so after that, things were quiet. Then our mother called. She'd heard Derek's version, of course, which apparently framed the whole thing as me being cold and unhelpful for no reason. My mother is not a bad person, but she has always thought of conflict as a temporary weather pattern. Wait it out, apologize to whoever is loudest, and it'll pass. She asked me if I could just talk to Derek and work it out. Mom, I said, he showed up to my home with 9 people after I explicitly told him no. What is there to work out? She was quiet for a moment. Then, he said you never really said no? I took a breath. I texted him. I have the texts. Would you like me to forward them to you? She said that wasn't necessary. She said Derek means well. I said I knew that, and that meaning well and behaving well were different things, and I loved her and I would talk to her later in the week. I did not call Derek. He didn't call me either. Not for almost 3 months. When he finally reached out, it was a text in January. A photo of him and Tina at some party, smiling. Happy New Year. Hope you're good. Breezy. Normal. Like none of it had happened. I stared at that text for a long time. I thought about the $14,600. I thought about the check I wrote when I was 24, and the $400 he paid back, and how I'd told myself it was fine, because relationships matter more than money. I thought about him standing at my window doing math in his head. I thought about Tina measuring the second bedroom with her hands. I thought about 9 people in my lobby, arguing with the security guard, because my brother had never once had to reckon with the word no. I typed back, Happy New Year. And I left it at that. I'm not gonna tell you I don't miss him. I do. Not the Derek who showed up that Friday afternoon with a car full of people who expected to sleep on my floor. I don't miss that version. But the brother I grew up with? The one who taught me to ride a bike in our grandmother's driveway and made me laugh until I fell off? Who used to call me just to talk about nothing? I miss that person. I'm not sure that person and the man on the phone that day were quite the same anymore. What I will tell you is this. The morning after the wedding weekend, I woke up in my condo alone. The light came through the floor-to-ceiling windows the way it always does, and it turned everything gold, and I made coffee. And I stood at the window, and it was exactly as peaceful as that first morning with the keys. Maybe more so, because now I knew it was mine in a way I hadn't fully understood before. Not just legally, not just financially. It was mine because I had chosen it, and when someone tried to take it from me, I had chosen it again. There is a version of this story where I open the door, where I say yes, it's just 3 nights, it's just family, it's just easier. I thought about that version. I know exactly how it would have gone. The noise, the dishes, the mornings with strangers in my kitchen. The way Derek would have taken photos of the view and said something like, we should do this every year. The way I would have smiled and said, yeah, maybe, and hated myself a little for it. I didn't open the door. I don't think I ever have to again. That's the thing nobody tells you about setting a boundary. You think it's gonna feel like a fight, like a confrontation, like the dramatic peak of something. But it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like turning a key in a lock. Quiet, final, mine. I've been thinking about cause and effect a lot lately. Not in a cosmic, mystical way, just in the plain, observable way that life actually works. Every pattern you allow becomes a pattern someone else expects. Every time I said yes when I meant no, I wasn't being kind. I was writing a set of instructions for how to treat me. That's the part I had to sit with after everything that happened with my brother. Not the anger. The anger passed pretty quickly, honestly. What stayed longer was the question of how we got there. How 2 people who grew up in the same house, who shared the same grandmother's driveway, ended up on opposite sides of a lobby confrontation over a guest list. And the answer, when I was honest with myself, was gradually. One small yes at a time. The $200 I didn't chase. The dinners I covered. The return flight I bought because it was easier than the conversation. I had been teaching Derek for years that my boundaries were suggestions. That my no had a negotiation window. That if he pushed just a little, I'd find a way to make it work. I did that. That part was on me. What changed wasn't Derek. People rarely change because you want them to. What changed was me deciding that my comfort in my own home, the home I had worked 6 years to afford, was not a reasonable thing to trade for someone else's convenience. That sounds simple. It wasn't. It took a long time to believe it without feeling guilty about it. The tricky thing about intelligence in situations like this is that smart people often talk themselves out of doing the right thing. I talked myself into lending Derek money $14,000 worth of times because I could always construct a logical reason why this time was different. Why family meant absorbing this particular cost. Why the relationship was worth the sacrifice. Intellect without honesty just becomes a very efficient machine for rationalizing what you already want to do. Real clarity, the kind that actually helps you, requires you to look at the pattern, not just the individual instance. I finally did that. And the resolve part, that took practice too. I had rehearsed the confrontation in my head a dozen times over the years and always lost. In my imagination, Derek always had a counter-argument I hadn't prepared for. And Tina always looked wounded in that particular way that made me feel like the villain. But when it actually happened, when he called and said we're 20 minutes out, as if I hadn't said no, I wasn't scared. I was just clear. There's a difference between those two things, and I don't think I understood it until that moment. Diane, that's me, didn't win because I was louder or meaner or more strategic. I won because I had already made the decision before the moment arrived. The management flag, the conversation with Patricia, the text with the lease language, none of that was confrontational. It was just preparation. It was me deciding, quietly and in advance, that I wasn't going to be moved. The lesson I keep coming back to is this. The people who take from you don't usually see themselves as takers. Derek genuinely believed he was asking for something reasonable. That's not malice. It's the predictable result of years of being accommodated. If you want that to change, you have to be the one to change it, because they have no reason to. It's uncomfortable. It costs you something. In my case, months of silence and a phone call from my mother. But the alternative is a life where your home, your time, and your peace are permanently available to whoever asks loudest. I chose differently. And that Friday afternoon, with my tea and my window, and nobody else's bags on my floor, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, like the space was actually mine.